So I'm pleased to be joined with Howard Ray and Lisa Bell Ray from North Carolina. And you guys were just two of the people that were pretty impacted by Hurricane Helene that ripped through the southern states at the end of September. And you guys have a really interesting story and really good to see God's provision kind of over you and your life and everything like that. So we're going to hear about that in a few minutes. But first, if somebody doesn't really know what happened with Hurricane Helene, or maybe just to get your perspective, what was that like, living through it and seeing the destruction, seeing your community, like how everything transpired?
Gotcha. Uh, it was poor. It was that morning was like pretty normal, like up till 9:15, because I'd stayed out all night. I mean, I'm a lieutenant with the fire department, so I stayed out all night checking roads and stuff like that. And I've seen water run down the road before and all this, and I'm like, yeah, well, it ain't gonna be nothing. And about 9:15, it was about 6 inches of water down running down the road, and I was like, yeah, I've seen this before. So about 9:30, there was about 3.5 feet of water. So it got up real quick before you could even do anything. So we're sitting there, or we're at that point where I'm praying like no other, like I mean yelling, praying, I I'm sure my father that's dead and gone now, he could hear me for sure. But it was we watched trailers slowly start going down the river, and we was the last trailer to go down. And when we started floating down through there, I was like, "Oh, this is bad. This is real bad." And we floated across the pond, and when we got across the pond to the where I guess where the land was on the other side, it tore the frame out from underneath our trailer, and it throwed me through the wall. So I went through the wall of the trailer, and it opened up, and I know it was all God, because God's what pushed me through it. And then it sucked Lisa down on the couch. When she was on the couch, I just reached and grabbed her, and we floated probably another 400 yards down the river. And I'll never forget her saying, "We're going to drown." I was like, "Well, if we're going to drown, we're going to drown together." I said, "We're not going to do this. One person makes it, one person doesn't."
Mhm.
And we float on down, like I said, 400 yards. I tell her to jump, and she grabs a hold of some barbed wire from a barbed wire fence and wraps her hands around it and pulls herself up onto land. I mean, it teared her hand up pretty bad. I mean, it was bad. And then when she got up on land, I grabbed a hold of the back of her leg and I pulled myself up. We stayed there, and this house was like just like a foot higher than everything else. So there was no water, but there was all water all the way around the house. So we sit there for probably 3 hours, which I didn't want to break into the house, but the garage door now it's broke. Now the yeah, I had to get her in because she was starting to shiver, and I was like, yeah, this is not good. That's hypothermia, and I was like, which I have to deal with that. Doing my job, what I do.
Mhm.
So I was like, well, we got to get her warm, and there's nothing that can't tell me that when I opened the door to that garage, there was only two blankets in that garage. You can't tell me there was no such thing as God. I mean, that was all God.
Mhm.
And when I went through that wall, I just knew that I was going to meet God. But He opened up the wall of it, let us float on through. I mean, that's all God. That's all you can say. That's all God. But we
That's
stayed there for probably about 3 hours, and then somebody come found us. Then we had to wait another 3 more hours before the water could go down to run a track hoe over where we was at to pick us up and bring us back across the river. Then we stayed the night at our friend's house. We went to the hospital the next day. My wife, or Lisa, she stayed in town, waited on her kids. I walked back to Pensacola, to go help my boys because there's only like 10 or 12 of us. I know if one guy's out, I mean, that makes it harder on everybody else trying to deal with all this destruction because if you really wanted to name it something, it would look like a war zone. It looked like somebody just bombed it, literally. I mean,
And
there's roads missing, there's mountain slides, it's just bad.
and have you ever seen anything quite to this extent
There's
before?
nobody never, there's nobody's
Mm-mm.
never seen that around here.
Not
Nobody.
here.
Absolutely. And I guess, yeah, with you saying like how even just your work kind of came into play too, like how did that come in handy of just like, okay, maybe just like that first responder kind of mindset as well,
Mm-hmm.
just being, okay, this is what we need to do is hypothermia. We need to like do something to be able to
Mm-hmm.
help as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've been on the fire department for almost 15 years, so that helped a lot. Doing a lot, we do a lot of training and stuff like that. So it's come in handy, especially that day.
Yeah. It's probably one of those things that you wish you didn't have to use it in your own
Yeah,
personal, but then when
yeah,
you do, it's like, okay, I'm glad that I have that and
yeah,
you have that knowledge and everything like that. So I just
yeah.
also want to ask, like you're floating on a couch down the water, like, and you said you
Mhm.
went
Yes,
pretty
it
far.
is.
Like, what was that like? How did the couch float that long, that far?
I don't know. God.
Yeah. Hey man, on that.
It was
That's
a
all God.
actually a sectional couch, and I had unhooked it like 2 weeks before because I was vacuuming under it. I never hooked that part back. I don't know why I didn't. I usually always do, but I didn't. So that piece is the only part that come out. Well, I'm
Mhm.
sure I don't know where the rest is. It wasn't.
I don't even know where none of it is now.
I never seen the couch again. Like we walked around and found some of our stuff, but
Not the couch.
mm,
And what's that like, even just, yeah, like the cleanup kind of like you're like, okay, now you're walking around seeing different things, or maybe like you said, not being able to find certain things. Like what's that mindset? Like your whole life has just been thrown
yeah.
out everywhere.
I lost my dad's Bible. That really hurt me because mm, that was hard. That's the hardest thing to me
I
because
mean,
that meant a lot.
it's hard going up there, but we know God has a plan, or He wouldn't have kept us alive.
No, no,
And
we shouldn't be alive.
Mm-mm.
No, because if you could see where we would be sitting actually in that trailer, it's smashed. A trailer is about 14 feet wide, and where we was sitting or where I was standing, she was sitting. It's pushed together about 3 feet. So all together. So I'm just like, no, no. And I've had a lot of people tell me, well, I've seen some comments before on other things, and they said, oh, well, it was the luck of the draw or
No,
draw. And I'm like, no, no, that was all God. That was all Him.
and I love that this is like the approach that you guys are taking with it. It's like it's a miracle that you guys are alive, that you're both
Yeah.
alive
yeah,
together, you're both well. So I love how you're giving that glory back to God because it's probably a lot easier said than done. You probably have heard a million times when things get tough, like give God the glory, but you guys are walking testaments of that,
yeah.
right? So like,
Oh, it's all God. Every bit of it.
mm,
110%. I will never take it for granted for one. And I'll definitely not take it from him neither because it was all him because we should not be alive. Should not. 110%.
and how has going through this really strengthened your own faith? Was this kind of mindset you had before, or was it kind of going through this and it really just shook your world?
I think it strengthened mine a lot.
Oh, it did not. A lot more. But it makes me think like Job, where he got everything took from him and then God give it back. I believe that God will. But I mean, he give Job back twice as much, or I think, or all more than what he had.
Mhm.
But I don't even. It's not about the material things. It's about God. That's all it's about. Because at the end of the day, all these material things won't be here when we're all said and done.
Mhm.
And it's all, and because he said he's going to burn it. So ain't none of this going to matter.
And what's it like to now just have this as part of your guys' testimony? Just maybe as you're talking to people who don't share the same faith, don't have the same beliefs, but you're literally like a walking miracle now.
Uh,
It's hard sometimes because I have friends who don't believe, but I just keep telling them,
And just keep praying for them.
uh,
yeah. We're not only friends, people on social media, they've had stuff to say, but we just keep
oh, yeah.
praying for them.
Hmm.
Yeah, you have to. Because if you don't, I mean, it ain't the right thing to do for by not praying for them because they need to find God.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
if they don't, I promise you, there was one place that they don't want to be, and I don't want to be there neither. Which I
Absolutely.
know I'm not going to be there, but I don't want other people. I don't want to see other people do it. But people's going got their own beliefs. They're going to do what they want.
Mm. And as listeners and viewers of people watching this video, how can they continue to, pray for everybody that was affected by Hurricane Helene and, just the communities and everything like that?
it's hard. I mean, we lost our home, but I have two girls, and they lost their father in this hurricane, and their stepmom's still missing. So, and then we lost one of our best friends in it. It's been hard, but you just got to keep going.
Yeah, don't quit. There's
Mm.
no quit. No such thing as quit. When you quit is when you take your last dying breath, and then you just start a new chapter with God. Then,
Mm.
and then that's for eternity. So
But what I do know we'll see our best friend again.
that's right.
And I know the girls will see their daddy again.
And then that's probably just a little bit, I mean, obviously there's nothing like having them physically there with you, but just
Oh,
know
yeah.
get to see them again is probably really helpful as well.
Yep.
Mm. Well, Howard and Lisa, thank you so much for joining and kind of sharing a little bit of your story of what happened and just, seeing the faith that you guys have, the strength that God has given both of you to walk through this as a couple and kind of come out stronger on the other side. I think it's been really encouraging just get to hear that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you for letting us share it.
Thank you.